Hi everyone, as a church we are going for a series called Bible Book by Book, and we're doing podcasts as a part of that. And so today myself, Nick and Chris, we're going to be talking about Exodus. Hope you enjoy.
This doesn't feel natural.
Oh, it's fine. Let's
sorry, Nick.
Come on, we got this. Sorry. Come on. It's fine, we're talking about Exodus. Good book. Prince of Egypt.
The Prince of Egypt's iconic.
Yeah.
When did you last watch The Prince of Egypt? Could you sing any of it for us?
No, you're the worship leader.
Be a good little intro.
No.
What an amazing film.
Yeah, it's a great film.
Exodus for 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
How are you doing with your Bible reading plans? Up to date, I'm sure.
I'm actually really enjoying it because often when you start a plan, especially Old Testament, you think, I'm going to read all these chapters, and then you realise that's quite a long time. You're having to read the same book. So I'm quite enjoying just covering what feels like one book. Well, it is one book, but one book across 1 week. I'm enjoying that. It's manageable.
Like you said, with a reading plan like the ones we're doing, where you cover however much of it in a week that you can get through, we're not doing really more than like 5 chapters in a week, are we? There's, with a book like Exodus, where it's obviously a lot longer than that, there are bits of it that we don't necessarily get to read through. Do you have any like standout Exodus moments that are your favourite bits, favourite stories, favourite verses?
Oh yeah, I got my favourite verse.
There's so much in Exodus, isn't
It's
there?
a lot.
It's massive.
Yeah.
What you got, Alice?
It's Exodus 33 where Moses
I do love roses.
where Moses basically talks about God, like, show us your presence, and then he says, I don't want to go anywhere unless your presence goes with us. And I just love that. Like, that is the prayer of my heart, of my life. God, I don't want to go anywhere unless you're going with me. Don't send me out there alone. I just love that.
Yeah.
That verse.
And that's where Moses is saying, like, even if you gave us everything that you promised, like, even if we had the land, even if we had all the blessings, but we didn't have you, like, it's not worth it. And when you start to apply that to your own life, it's a challenge, isn't it? If we could have all the, I don't know, material stuff, all the things that the world tells us we should value. Actually, without God, that's utterly worthless. And
It's just futile, isn't it?
Yeah. Moses like weeps over it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favourites is Exodus 34, and just God then speaks to Moses, and he says, he talks about his name, the name of the Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a gracious, the Lord, a God, merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third generation. It says that Moses, his initial reaction straight away, it says he quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. And just such a great verse of God speaking about who he is, his presence coming before Moses, promising just his faithfulness, his steadfastness. But then Moses' reaction of being quick to bow his head and to lie on the floor and to bow down and worship. And what a challenge that is for us to have that sort of posture of worship. And
I think one of the things Andy said in Hedge End on Sunday was how one of the ways that you could sort of do an overview of Exodus is it's a book where God reveals his nature and his character to us. So like at the burning bush, God as the rescuer through the Red Sea, and one of the ways that God's revealed to us is as like Jireh, provider, and the God who provided for his people in the wilderness when they'd had their great escape moment and they're wandering in the wilderness and they need God to provide to literally keep them alive, keep them as a people. And I think there's a challenge, isn't there, for us to look with preaching every week. You're looking at what does this mean for me in my life? What does this mean for me tomorrow when I go to work or in family life? And I think to trust in God as provider at all times is a real like faith stretching challenge, isn't it? Where so often we can be tempted just to look to ourselves to provide for ourselves or to strive to work to earn enough to be able to provide for ourselves. But actually there's a real challenge, isn't there, to fully trust that God is our provider, and that actually we may have seasons where we feel like we have a lot, we might have a little, but actually God is provider constantly. Yeah. I don't know, do you have any moments in your life that stand out as when you've had to really trust God to provide for you? Or
Just after we got married in 2008, and it was the financial crash, and there wasn't many jobs, so I worked I think for about 5 months, and just this year of us, we were in Oxford at the time, and we had God starting to speak about with prophetic words and stuff about us moving on somewhere else as well, but it was a time when we were having to trust God to provide for every day, and even for the little things. Like I remember one day we were all going for a walk and found just like there was £5 on the path in the middle of nowhere, and just this. We thanked God so much because we'd got £5. I know, and just that
I'm sure you looked around to see
thankfulness.
who might have dropped it.
Yeah, of course. Check there was no one else around. And but yeah, learning thankfulness, appreciating God providing, and He did many more than just the £5, but also trusting in Him for the next steps as well is significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think often we can think about provision, and the immediate focus that we can think is money. And I think that's great. And I have lots of stories of God providing miraculously money. When I moved down here to come and do my gap year, like I saved up to the penny the amount that I needed to be here, and God provided that. And I got tips, crazy amounts of tips, hundreds of pounds worth of tips in one evening that covered the cost for an entire year, and all sorts of those great things. But also seeing God provide in crazy other ways. Like one week I was at university and I had no petrol, but I had no money to fill up the car, and I just prayed, God, like, would you provide? And you know what, I did the whole week back and forth to Bournemouth, and I didn't have to fill up my petrol once. And just like, there was not enough petrol in my car, but God provided petrol for me. Like, really, really cool story for me, that I just think like God even cares about the petrol in my car. And then just things of like living where we live, and houses and families that I've lived with in the journey of my life, and just the provision in that way of people coming forward and being like, oh, we can meet your need here, and God using other people too to show His provision to me. And I think there's that challenge, isn't it, of like we see God as our provider, but it kind of links back to what we were talking about last week of like, we are blessed to be a blessing. God has provided much for us. How can we as people also demonstrate the provision of God in our lives and in what we do?
The verses Nick read earlier around, so God reveals Himself to Moses, and Moses' like instant response and reaction is to just bow down in worship at who God is. And I think if you look at the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, it's not that long, isn't it, before, so they've had this amazing miracle at the Red Sea. God's rescued them from slavery, and then it's unfortunately not long, is it, until they start grumbling and they become quite forgetful, and they turn inwards, or they look to build their own gods. And actually, when we're looking for God to provide, and things might sometimes feel like they're tough, we have a choice we have to make, don't we? We can choose to almost, forget it, God's not provided, this isn't how I expected it would be, therefore I'm just going to turn somewhere else, do my own thing. I wish I was back in Egypt, they even said, didn't they? Whereas like Moses' reaction on revelation of who God is just to worship Him and to live in faith. And I think for us, when we look back over even the last couple of years, for us, so often with provision stories, it is about those amazing moments of like miraculous sudden provision of exactly what we needed. I think for us, sometimes it's only with like reflective hindsight that you look back over a longer period of time, and you can just see the hand of God at work at just the right time when you needed things, and you can almost miss it at the time because it might not be so significant or so massive or so seemingly miraculous, but actually you just reflect and you think back, and we've always had, I don't know, we've always had somewhere to live, we've always had people around us who have looked out for us and cared for us, and I think that it's about that posture of gratitude, isn't it, for everything that God has given for us.
Yeah, and prayer. I think it's like it's interesting. You read the Israelites moaning away to Moses, and Moses goes straight to God about it, and then God is Jehovah Jireh. He's the provider, and that's one of his names. And so Moses trusts in him, looks to him, speaks to him, and God provides for the whole of Israel, even though they were moaning. I look back on a bread journal from a couple of years ago that we were doing in COVID, and near the beginning of one of them, I'd written like 5 or 6 prayer requests, basically, that I was asking to God, and it. All of them, some of them financial, some of them about relationships, some of them for family, but all of them God had answered, God had provided for in one way or another. And at the time, they seemed like big prayers. And it's that, when we feel that the Israelites sensed there was something more, and that it showed itself in a negative way. They were groaning and moaning. But when we sense, God's got something more, it's how do we turn to him in prayer and trust and thankfulness and lean into him for it, I think is a challenge.
Yeah.
I know that I can get so caught up in like self-reliance and like think that I can just do it all in my own. Oh, I can do this, like I can sort this out, I can do that. But actually, like the story of the Israelites in Exodus really is stuff the self-reliance. It's all about your faith, and do you really believe that God will do what he has promised? And I think like what you say almost, and what you've been talking about, looking back and hindsight, actually just remembering the times that God has been faithful fuels a greater sense of faith and expectancy that he will move, provide, whatever in the now. And love that, like you've got stories of prayers that you were praying back in like 2021 or whenever it was, that in 2024 you're looking back on and you're thinking, oh God, like you answered those. And
Is there, because it's obviously multiple areas of life that God is in all areas of life he's our provider. Is there an area of life that you struggle to trust in him to provide for more than others? Because we naturally go to finances, don't we? But really, it's trusting in him for all areas.
Definitely. I think we can naturally jump to finances because it's an area that we don't talk about enough, and it's an area that we, I don't know, people can feel quite insecure about it, and it's an area that feels like so much of our worth can be wrapped up in it. So I think you do naturally jump there, don't you? It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think we can't talk about Exodus without talking about the Israelites being led by the cloud and then the pillar of fire, and just how amazing that is, that they were being led visibly, tangibly, day by day for years through the wilderness and then and through the Red Sea by God, and just the challenge that is for us as well to seek God to provide really for his guidance, for his presence.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool timing as well that we've just had 21 days of prayer and fasting as a church, and actually I know I can sometimes find myself guilty of it, that we can almost live I don't know, in the immediacy of whatever we're going through at the minute. So you can be in 21 days of prayer and fasting and feel like I don't know, your prayer life is pumped, and then when that finishes you think, well, that's a box ticked maybe, and I don't know when's the next one, I'll wait for that. But actually the people were led daily by they didn't move unless they saw God moving before them, and actually there's that daily reliance on just the presence of God being the thing that leads us and shapes us, isn't there?
There's also that bit where the cloud comes behind them as they step into the Red Sea, and there's like an element of protection when we rest in the presence of God that I think we often talk about, it's so good that God's with us, but actually he also protects us, and he knows exactly what we need when we need it, and all the things that he's protecting us from that we might have no idea about. I love that God just cares so much, and he leads us, but he also goes behind us. And I know it's not in Exodus, but there is that verse that in Psalm that talks about he goes before us, he goes behind us, he hems us in, and there's a sense of the presence of God being all around us for our good, for our wellness, for our wholeness. And
it's great. And the Israelites were in fear of the Egyptians, weren't they? It says that they were fearful, and so when we think of what we're fearful, we can ask God to come and show us his presence. protecting us from what we're afraid of, and
Yeah.
protecting us from what the enemy may throw our way.
Yeah. Is there something of the presence of God that you think we might not make as big a deal out of as we might, in terms of when you look through Exodus and you see again another theme of just the presence of God? So like again, Moses at the burning bush, just in the very presence of God, and there's a sense of the sort of weight and the glory and the holiness of God, where it's take off your sandals, don't come any closer, you're on holy ground. And then you fast forward on and it's sort of instructions of, and we're going to come on to look at it as well in the next few weeks, but all the instructions around the tabernacle and where the ark would dwell, and just in the Holy of Holies, and there were such descriptions of what this thing was and how people couldn't come near it at all. And I know now we're on the other side of the cross, and it says in Hebrews we can boldly come to the throne with confidence. But there's maybe something of the nature and the character of God and his holiness that we maybe don't, in our worship, we probably just don't think of as much as, I don't know, put yourself in the shoes of an Israelite. What would you think about who God is? You'd think he's holy, so holy that I, as a sinful person, can't come near. And actually we might not have a big enough view of what that means.
Yeah, and that I completely agree, and that sort of goes as well alongside the fact of they were being led daily. Like throughout the whole of their days, they had this cloud, and through the whole night there was fire, and so there is this separation, but there's also this continual interaction between the people of Israel and God that we also miss out on. We look forward to the Sunday, don't we? Worshipping on Sunday, but how do we lead our everyday with that sense of God leading us?
Yeah.
We're going to come on to Leviticus next week. I think Andy's going to describe it in his preach as the graveyard of all Bible reading plans, where people often get stuck. What's one bit of encouragement, Alice, you can give us for people to stick in there, keep with it?
Numbers comes the next week. No, I'm joking. Jesus comes. Jesus comes.
Great.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that podcast. If you feel like that stirred something in you or provoked you to share a story to encourage others, why not pop that down in the comments below? We'd love to read and to hear your stories too. But for the rest of you, we'll see you next week.